Okay. That way, if somebody comes in halfway through the introductions, I'll just say, watch the video, the recording.
And since you're not announcing people, I'm going to start in. I'm Mary Barkworth. I'm up at the top next to Neil there. I'm retired Utah State University, used to be at the herbarium here, now working overseas in Pakistan and Somaliland. That's me. Rich, over to you.
Rich Rabler, University of Michigan Herbarium. I've been involved off and on with Symbiota for quite a few years, and I'm interested in seeing where this is going.
Evan, you're next. And on my screen.
Yeah, we'll go by Mary's screen then. Hey, everybody, I'm Evan. I'm a developer on Symbiota2, and happy to be meeting with you all.
Colleen, repeat, I guess.
Hi, I'm Colleen Carter. I'm at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science as an invertebrate collections assistant. And I'm here substituting for Paula Cushing, who is the arachnology curator, who's out in the field at the moment. So I am 3 weeks into this position. I have lots of database experience, but I'm brand new to Symbiota. So we'll see how this goes.
Well,
yeah, hi, I'm Will Pearce. I was at Utah State University. I've moved back to the UK and now I'm at Imperial College London, where I'm an evolutionary ecologist, and I'm excited to help with the development of some of the plugins and some of the kind of the biology ends of Symbiota 2 as opposed to the informatics ends of it.
Andrew?
That me?
Yes.
All right. Didn't quite hear you. Yes, Sandra Brantley, retired from University of New Mexico, Museum of Southwestern Biology, also a spider biologist. So hello to Paula when you see her next. And I've been working at building up, before I retired, our alcohol collection, which is primarily spiders and other arachnids. So in getting their data into SCAN. So I'm here to see, partly because of arm twisting from Neil, to see what is going on with the new version.
Okay. Andrew Dahl, who's turning over to his computer right now to do something, and he's got his mask on his face still. Andrew?
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah.
Oh, and you now just jumped down to another part of the computer. Yeah.
Yeah, I switched computers. Colleen's in the room with me. I'm at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. I'm the assistant collections manager for zoology. So I help out with all the collections. I work with arachnology a bit. I also work in the entomology collection. My focus is mostly on vertebrates, to be honest, but I do help out with the database side of things.
Okay. Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Mitchell, and I work at Oregon State University on the flora of Oregon. And we've been working on a custom Symbiota. Sorry, I have a child at home. A custom Symbiota user interface. And I'm really curious about the tools that are maybe becoming available with Symbiota 2. I'm going to mute myself now.
Okay, thank you. Harry? Harry, yeah,
Yes.
okay. Brief introduction.
Brief introduction. Yeah, so I'm Herrick Brown. I'm at the University of South Carolina, AC Moore Herbarium. I worked with the Cernic project as their data manager. I'm interested to see how things can be improved upon or expanded. And I'm interested in the aspects of the extended specimen network and how Symbiota 2 might help us extend that even further.
Paige?
Hi. Uh-oh. Okay, sorry, I'm in the same room as Evan, so he had to mute. I'm Paige. I work at Northern Arizona University. I am getting my PhD with Neil, working with pollinators, specifically bees.
Okay. Curtis, and then we get to Brianne.
That's all I got.
That's what you sounded, you ended up that way. Curtis, you're next. Wake up, Curtis, who are you?
Curtis, you're muted.
He's not saying anything either, and his lips aren't moving, and I'm wondering whether he's actually involved. Oh, okay. Let's go with Brianne. She's been there for a while.
Sure. Hi, I'm Brianne Duclos. I'm 2 months into a position as the data technician for the U.S. National Native Bee Monitoring Research Coordination Network. And the RCN, one of our objectives is to facilitate putting a lot of bee data online, and we are working with SCAN to do that. So I'm here because I'm curious about the transition to Symbiota2.
Great. Katie, we heard from you.
Yeah, Katie. Yeah, we heard from Katie.
Yeah.
I think we heard from everybody, and Curtis's audio is not working. He said he can try again. I can share my screen, and we can. Okay, I'm going to admit him one more time, and if I fail to admit him, then you will be the designated person to go over the slides.
Okay, that works. That's good for me.
Oh, good. It's not me.
Curtis, can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that, everybody. My audio in my computer isn't working. It's the first time, hundreds of Zoom meetings, and this is the first time this happened.
Things happen.
And just to give a little bit of background, so we've been meeting weekly for several months now as we go into the final phase of Symbiota2, and we're not quite ready for prime time, but as Herrick mentioned in an email yesterday, you got to jump in the water sometime. And so we've just decided to make these sessions open to everyone in case you wanted to make suggestions as to how we could improve it. Like, well, I should say everybody but Linda can make suggestions because she could go on for days. So what we'll probably do is have these meetings every 2 weeks. And in part, it just depends on what people want to do. And we can have a changing cast of characters participate. But so right now, then, unless something else changed, we would have it on this day at this time every 2 weeks for people to provide live feedback. And then the format is pretty simple. We were just thinking about doing what we normally do during our working sessions. And that's typically either Curtis or Evan sharing their screen and sort of going through the front end, what it looks like. And for any developer types, they could also switch to some screenshots of actual code. Will, did you want to say something?
Oh, I did. I didn't. I thought I was muted. You got my cough. I'm sorry.
No, I saw your facial expression.
Well, I'll be more careful. Yes, I was just going to say, fortnightly, as you know, works very well for me. But on the other rotation, and so I think fortnightly is as a result of a request I made. But I moved things around to make it for this week. Normally, this wouldn't work for me. So from next week.
Okay. Yeah, we can either, we can decide afterwards. We may have another meeting next week or just start it 3 weeks from today.
And apologies, and everyone, for some context, that's a childcare thing. I'm not just very weird about fortnights. It's a childcare thing, and you know, the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody but Katie can appreciate that. Okay, Curtis, do you want to start?
Okay, sure. Can you make me co-host?
You can share your screen.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and share then. All right. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Curtis Dyerson. I'm a professor of computer science at Utah State University, and my area of expertise is databases, and I know very little about biology. So the goal of the Symbiota2 project is basically that Symbiota has depended upon a very small and dedicated pool of developers, basically Ed and Ben. And so when you want new features, you go to Ed or Ben and say, can I add this new feature? And basically the desire to add new features outstrips the capabilities or the capacities of these two programmers. They're great programmers. They just got a lot of other things on their plate. And so, development has slowed down in some sense in Symbiota. And so our goal with this Symbiota2 project is really to enlarge the Symbiota developer community. And the developers that we're sort of depending upon are in part sort of in-house developers, and I would put Ed and Ben into that category. So they're sort of developers that are in some sense on staff or hired on soft money. Graduate students are really what a key source, especially computer science graduate students or students who are doing dual degrees between computer science and biology. Maybe class projects. So for instance, in my database class, I teach databases. I can do a Symbiota extension as a class project. But really what we're targeting is what I call, or what Will calls, the bio nerd herd level of program. When Will was here at Utah State, he taught a course that introduced or extended the capabilities of sort of biology students, and they were biology majors, to teach them some computer science, some programming. And they're very capable students, and they make excellent programmers. And the good thing is for Symbiota is that they know the biology, and it's important to know the biology to do these extensions. And so really our main goal here is, sort of, we want to lower the cost of development. So how do we go about lowering that cost of development? And the second thing that everybody's concerned with always is how to fund that development. And I'll get to that at the very end. So Symbiota 2, really what we did was we redesigned the internals of Symbiota to make it easier to develop. And how we did this was we separated the functionality into what we call plugins. And now what these plugins really we can think of are apps. And so I have an app to do search, or I have an app to do view the taxonomy. And these are organized in terms of the code into what we call plugins. And what Symbiota 2 really is some core services that allow us to plug in new functionality in the form of these plugins. And there's two kinds of plugins. There's a backend plugin, and these backend plugins are manage the data, and they manage the data through a thing called an API. An API is an application programming interface. And then there's also the front end. The front end constitutes the user interface. Let me talk about a little bit more about this separation. So the Symbiota 2 core, it really provides some basic sort of services, such as authentication and internationalization. And it provides the framework for plugging in these apps. And then we have front-end apps, and these front-end apps are parts of the user interface. And they also do some data cleaning when you enter input into various pages, web pages, or web forms. They clean those before they send the data back to the backend. And the backend is really where the data resides, and this is where all the data management is done. And that includes cleaning data and uploading data. And the key part that we made a decision on is that the front end is going to communicate to the back end through what are called web services. And a web service is just well, I'll talk a little bit more about web services, but the nice thing about this separation between the front end and the back end is it'll allow these apps not just to communicate to Symbiota 2 or Symbiota 1 databases, but it'll also in future permit us to hook up to Specify or Arctos as long as they provide the correct web services. Okay, so what do these web services do for us? So what's the problem that they solve? And the problem that they solve is basically we've got all our data in a relational database, which consists of flat tables and interactions between these tables. These edges represent sort of pointers from one row in one table to a row in another table, a thing called a foreign key. In order to manipulate this data in a modern program, what we have to do is we have to create some structure, and that structure is a hierarchical structure, and it creates basically an object. So in this particular case, we're mapping from these flat tables, and we're creating this rich structure that allows us as programmers to very easily manipulate that data. How do we do this mapping? Well, a nice thing is that people have worked extensively on this object relational mapping, and we're going to use a system called TypeORM. And the nice thing about TypeORM, it provides a DBMS independent, so it can work with Postgres, MySQL, MongoDB, a whole bunch of different kinds of databases. And it's a high-level specification of what your data looks like. And automatically from that, it generates the web services API. So it generates all our web services for us. Then our front end can communicate through our back end. And there's get services and put services. Get services fetch the data, put services write the data. And basically, if I'm coding and I look at some TypeScript code to call a web service, this is sort of the call to get a list of collections. And so it's from a coding perspective, it's really nice because it simplifies all our data management. From a separation of concerns perspective, it's really great because our back end just worries about providing the web services and our front end just worries about the user interface. Okay, so overall, one of the main goals of our project is we want to make it easier to develop apps, and we're calling these apps plugins. And the key to lowering that bar for developing these apps is modularity. So basically, we're going to package up all the functionality associated with a particular feature in Symbiota into a plugin. And this plugin is a self-contained sort of module. And then users or developers can just work on that one module without worrying about the rest of the system. The other thing we're going to do is, again, this clean separation of backend and front end that we're communicating through these web services. The second thing is that we're going to build Symbiota2 on top of sort of modern web development technology. So if you went out today and you were Amazon and you wanted to construct web pages for your shopping application, how would you do it? Well, you might use TypeORM, Angular, and TypeScript, which is what we're using. Finally, with these modern technologies, we get a bunch of stuff for free. We get improved security, we get layout. Layout is just your website works, adjusts to cell phones or tablets or whatever form you're looking at it on, in whatever kind of web browser. You get internationalization, you get API documentation. So for funding purposes, how do you think about sort of funding going forward? We're creating a framework that makes it easy to develop new functionality. So if I'm thinking about new functionality for an NSF grant, what I say is, hey, I'm gonna set aside some money to write an app that sits on top of Symbiota2 framework. And that's sort of how we see funding going forward. Thanks. That's a very brief overview. I kind of flew through that. If anybody has any questions, just let me know.
Well, when you were going through that, I just realized we may very well have two populations here. So we might have the front end users like Sandy that says, look, I just want your dialog boxes to match up. And then people that like Herrick that might think more about the back end. So if it turns out that, we have like two groups, future meetings, we can say this is a front end user meeting, this is a back end user meeting.
I guess maybe I could just sort of add something, but this is less of it's not a question, obviously, but it's just something I want to highlight that I think Curtis has already said that I think is really cool. He was talking there about how, the things you get for free and sort of, the importance of this, appification, essentially, of Symbiota, the ability to plug and play in different modules. And I think a really good example of that is this new framework that, Curtis and Evan have been working so very hard on. So in my lab, I have a student, Austin, who was a bio nerd herd member, for whatever it's worth. And he was able to use this API to write an R package that can interface with any Symbiota2 portal and instance that's set up. And as a portal maintainer, all you do is flick the switch saying, yep, I'm good with the API. And then anyone who wants to can have access to that data and work with it and use it and do cool analyses with it, again, once you flick the switch, of course, and all within R. And that's the kind of thing that prior to this kind of compartmentalization, and I really like that word app, because this appification, this plugin development was something that we just never could have done. And it's really opening the door to all kinds of modifications. And again, it also opening the door to allowing more developers to work on it is brilliant, because it means that those developers who are more excited by the things that only developers are excited about, like two-factor authentication and, you know, dual streaming uploads and things like that, that the rest of us don't really think about, have got the time to work on that, while the bio-nerd herds, the rest of us, like me, can work on those plug-in things, those cosmetic things, those also useful analytical things that can really support the kinds of stuff that we need to get grants funded. You know, and so I think, you know, what Curtis and Evan have done is, I think, frankly, like really cool. And, you know, we're already, yeah, it was just a really fun experience writing that R package, because it really just showcased to me just how much work has gone into it and how useful that is.
And so, Herrick, you mentioned the relevance of this to the extended specimen concept. So I think that that's part of it, is making it really easy to pull data out of Symbiota portals and use them in various research data sets. And another thing that, I mean, we've talked about a little bit, and that is this commitment to being able to support any Darwin core field that is available. So much like GBIF now says, we will, if you have a field, we will be able to find it. And so right now, as I understand it, to add a field to Symbiota is just so much work, because you have to change it in so many different places. So the thought here by Evan is to just create a table that you can add however many fields that you want. Now, they won't be searchable necessarily, but they will, if you have a data set that includes, let's say, corolla length for that specimen, that you could include that field in the data.
Cool.
Does that make you happy, Eric?
Yes. I also, you said Audubon, I mean, you said Darwin core. I'm wondering if Audubon core is something that's more robust in terms of, you know, what it can
oh yeah. And so Audubon core, but I mean, because Audubon core is more like media files and things like that, but it's a standard that can be used. And then there's other things like Humboldt core, which addresses more ecological data that it'll be able to bring in.
Another aspect that I was looking at, something that came over this morning, they've got a database of plot data for sub-Saharan Africa. And it somehow could integrate those two. Open Herbarium is a website that I'm trying to get people in sub-Saharan Africa to start contributing to. But the idea of being able to link specimen databases to plot databases, to me, is appealing. That I think there's a lot of data out there, and especially if we could manage to get the word across. If you're going to do a plot, we would like some specimens from your work, and then somehow get an interaction going there that would benefit all of us. So to me, the ability to link up with other sources and to do this more easily, and that the next generation could be not bio nerd herds, whereas when I enrolled in university, there was not a computer at the university. So the times they are changing, thank heaven.
Yeah, so the idea is you'll be able to link any arbitrary fields to any occurrence, right? So doesn't matter what specification it comes from, doesn't matter what the field's called or what the value consists of. The idea is that the core occurrence from Symbiota 1 will maintain itself and be like closed for modification, but open for extension, right? So you can add additional fields onto the existing occurrence framework really easily, like Mary was saying. So we don't have a demo of that yet, but we will get there, definitely. Neil, do you think I should go through my demo?
Yeah, and so really, so the last half hour has actually not been representative of our regular weekly meetings. It's really been more what Evan is going to do now And I would just say, so for future sessions, that's how we'll most likely start out, by just having Evan or Curtis or somebody else go through where they're at in terms of recreating the front end and talking about linkages, with the back end. So
yeah, and we'll try to skip the other thing that we usually do, is where Curtis and I digress into computer programmer talk, but I'll try to avoid that. So yeah, I see the Symbiota2 portal.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is the homepage for Symbiota2. We have both a UI and an API demo available at two different URLs. The first is demo.symbiota2.org, and that's where you can access the front end. And actually, if you go to, let me see, api.demo.symbiota2.org, you can get API docs, and this will be a little bit more useful for the backend people. You can sort of build request URLs and see what the Symbiota queries will look like. So this goes to that structure that we're pulling out of the database that Curtis was talking about. So this is an example of pulling collections by category, and you can do that all in code for building things like what Will was talking about with his R app. Yeah, so you can, let's go to a better example here. For occurrences, this documentation page will show you all the different parameters you can use to search for occurrences on the back end. And once you select some of those, it'll show you the URL it used to retrieve those occurrences, for example. And this is really useful for people developing sort of outside plugins and pulling data from Symbiota2 for analytics and things like that. So on the front end, we have the user interface that actually utilizes this area and pulls this data and displays it in a nice way. And that's what most people are going to be interested in. So I'll go through that in a sec. But first, our main code base is hosted on GitLab and synced up to GitHub. So if you found it on GitHub, it's in both places, but we primarily work out of GitLab here. So we're still very much in alpha. The API routes that I showed before, as well as the user interface, change a lot because all of this code is synced automatically to our two demo sites. Our two demo sites immediately once it's ready to go. So as soon as we add the code to GitLab, you can see the changes we've made live on our demo sites. And so that's good in the idea that everyone can see what we've been working on and the progress we've been making. And also a little bit unstable because if you build a URL in that backend API builder, don't expect it to work the next day because we haven't had a stable release yet. So for the UI public access, we can talk about some of the new features and existing features and what we've been trying to develop. The first is one of those things that Curtis mentioned we get for free, which is internationalization. You can see, as I said, it's the demo site, so some things aren't all the way there yet, and we're definitely open to issues on GitLab if you experience anything that you feel needs to be fixed. So yep, we can scroll through all these and get different internationalization options for our portal. And we have some publicly available plugins we can see at the top bar here. Now to show what Curtis and Will were talking about with the sort of appification of Symbiota, both the collections and occurrences are Symbiota plugins that we've built on top of the existing core. So if I make one quick change here in my code window, you can see that I've disabled those plugins, they go away, and that's how easy it is to add and remove features to this new Symbiota. So that's a big deal for the modularization of the app going forward and adding and removing features you like or don't like. So back to the live demo site. The main stuff we've been developing lately has been collections and occurrences. Under collections, you can see we have our collection categories and all of our collection test data here. And this might look familiar based on this page here. So I'm using scan as an example. I went back and forth as to whether I should suck up to Mary or Neil and use open herbarium or scan. And
Neil pays your salary.
yeah, right. Neil pays me, so I went with Neil. Yeah, so this is sort of the core of our development right now, is replicating existing functionality from Symbiota 1, right? So as a user, you will be able to set up your Symbiota 2 portal, migrate your data over, and then you'll know how to use it because it looks just like Symbiota 1. Little bit neater, but you get my idea. So here's our list of collections and categories, and we have minimal collection profile pages. Some of the test data doesn't have anything in it, you can see. It's pretty minimal because I'm not logged in. So login's another thing we've been working on. And I have my login right here, and you can see after I've logged in, I get an option to create occurrences and edit the collection info, which is pretty easy, pretty simple. I can change things. And it automatically pops up. I can also, if I'm within my collection, click on search occurrences, and it'll take me to the occurrence search page, which is this guy up here. So collection select, again, looks similar to the collection select in Symbiota 1. And then we go to the taxonomy or the search criteria. And you can see that we have a one-to-one mapping of the existing search functionality. And most of this is ready to go and searchable on the demo site. So I'm going to select all here. And if I search, you can see I get a bunch of search results in a sort of table view, which is equivalent to the search results here. If I click on a result, I get more info. Obviously not all the info for each occurrence is there yet. But if I click edit, I get some more options and can edit my occurrences, just like the Symbiota 1 base workflow. So my list here, I can go to the collection that the occurrence exists in. Yeah, that's the basic functionality for searching occurrences and taking a look at collections here. So for the user profile, we have editing profile, reset password, basic stuff, and my collections. So since I have all the permissions on the site, I have all the collections in my user profile collections, and I can click on anyone I want and edit it. But ideally, as a user of Symbiota, you just have collections that you've been granted access to or that you've created yourself. One thing we're missing here is add a new collection, but that's in our coming soon list. So another thing we have, if I log out, is new account. This is fully functional, so you can feel free to create an account on the demo site. And then when that create collection functionality becomes available, you can start creating a collection and creating occurrences for that collection. So this is the sort of high-level overview of what we've been working on and sort of what the demo site looks like as of right now. And as I said, it's in active development. We're in alpha still. We're still making changes all the time and adding improvements and new features. So we have a few features coming soon that we can talk about now is we have better occurrence autocomplete for searching. So right now, if I type in a family or scientific name, I don't get any autocomplete. And the same is true for country, state, province, all the geography data. But that's in the coming soon list. Taxonomic Explorer is coming soon, so we'll be able to edit the taxonomic tree and search for taxa and things like that. So you can see when I search, there's really no capability right now to go back and edit the search parameters I use. So that's another coming soon. Adding a collection, as I mentioned, is a feature that we're working on. And on the developer side, we're gonna add some testing for the existing code so that debugging is a little bit easier. So that's my run through of current features and work on Symbiota2. I could take any questions if anyone has any. Great, that's what I like to hear.
Well, okay, can't have that go. What about the option of entering the state province field first and then having it fill the country? We wouldn't have as many specimens coming from Wisconsin and the United Arab Emirates that way.
Right, exactly. I agree with that. That'll definitely be part of the autocomplete. Good
That
call.
would be great.
So, but Evan, it's true that if you sign up on the demo website and log in, you can basically look at any of these things in greater detail whenever you have the time. And then you can either put in, write an issue on GitLab. It could be something really, relatively small, what Mary just mentioned, or it could be more substantive. If it's, if you feel like you have like a lot of things to go through, we can set up a special Zoom session with you to go through the issues that you talk about. But we're trying to make sure that all of the functions in Symbiota occur in Symbiota2 plus some. But there are a couple of issues. So one issue for me that's relatively important is the use of spatial module. So spatial module is actually only found in a couple of portals. It's not found, I believe, in any of the plant portals. And I don't see anything in map search that a spatial module doesn't do. And so maybe one option is to, rather than, initially both will be available, but one question is whether, and I guess it's possible when you set up a data portal, Curtis, that you could pick whether you want one or both, right?
The spatial module right now is a standalone module, and currently the Symbiota, basically the other thing that we haven't mentioned yet is you can run both Symbiota2 and Symbiota1 on the same database. So we're backwards compatible with the Symbiota1 database, and so anything that works now in Symbiota1 works with Symbiota2 as well. So you can have both sites open on the same data portal.
Or it will, when we finish getting Symbiota2 set up.
Yeah.
It would definitely be great to see the spatial portal have some work done on that. Oregon Flora, we're using that, with our portal, and it's just with the lack of documentation that exists, you crack it open and it falls into 1,000 pieces on the garage floor. So, but there's such capacity there. It'd be really great to have that developed. It's huge.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that you guys over at Oregon have your own custom front end. And so this modularization of Symbiota2 is going to be really great for you guys, because you'll just be able to plug in the back end, configure front end to talk to it without any changes to the look and feel of your site. So
does that mean that we could actually go and say, we really like what she's doing on the Oregon Flora project? we'll put it on. We'll grab from her.
Yeah. So
There'll be a two-way back and fro. Because I know one of the things you mentioned, Linda, was that you made it easy to find taxon information.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's one of the things that I think is really frustrating about Symbiota2. So if instead of having to develop it from scratch, one can just take it over, modify it, and integrate it, that'd be one way to benefit us. So I like that synergy there.
yeah, exactly. A lot more compatible with a lot more different platforms and things. So.
But Linda, I'm in total agreement with you about the ability for spatial module to do a lot more than it does now. So for example, you can only load three KML files at a time, but ideally we would set it up to just have a drop down so you could pick a genus like evening primrose Unithera, and literally just have it put all of the distribution KML shapes in spatial module, and then you could overlay the occurrence data for each species and just see how well they fit. You know, that's like one example of a feature that I wish we had now, but I don't think it'll be that hard to include it.
I look to see whether Evan is nodding or not nodding, because
No, in total agreement. We just haven't gotten to the fun map stuff yet, but once we do, it'll be live automatically, like I said, and everybody will be able to take a look. And I'm sure Neil is just waiting for that day. So Neil, at least.
Well, if there's nothing else, then I guess we could just go.
I might quickly say something, if that's all right. I just wanted to say a wonderful blink and you'll miss it sort of moment that Evan did just a moment ago. Evan mentioned the GitLab website and how there are issues on it. If you remember, Evan shared his screen again for a moment and clicked some things and pressed some buttons and poof. If you go to, I think it's, well, you can put the link in the chat, Evan, but it's gitlab.com/Symbiota2/Symbiota2. There's an issues tab. And well, Evan, you're here, but I just wanted to emphasize, if right now you're sort of sitting there thinking like, oh, I want to sit down and think about what features I would really love to have in Symbiota2, you can of course email us, or you can use this amazing feature that Evan's going to show you now that he did in like 20 seconds in front of you. That's how easy it is. And then it's there on the internet for everyone to see that you asked for it, you know? So like we want direct feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the reason I pulled it up. So you can see at the top, I've added the current search autocomplete state province based on country, based on the suggestion that Mary just gave. And it's really easy. You just go to our Symbiota2 site, and like Will said, I'll paste these links in the chat. And it's the issue tab on the left here. And I can create a new issue, name it whatever I want. And add a description, get as detailed as I want about what I want to see on the site. And then the developers can do cool things like assign labels to it and assign them to themselves as a task. And you can see the work that you're requesting getting done, you know, as it is progressing. So yeah, great feature. And I'll share those links now.
Well, yeah, and I would just add that, so you can either bring up issues concerning how Symbiota2 is being built, but feel free to add issues like, this is one thing I hate in Symbiota. Can you please fix it in Symbiota2? Those would be really helpful as well.
Yep, those are more feature requests. And then in addition to feature requests, we have sort of bug reports or things that you notice are broken on the demo site. And that's why the demo site's really valuable, right? Like we can get as many people as possible to test it and open issues if they experience issues.
So when this is all ready, are we going to be responsible for migrating our data from 1 to 2? Or is that going to be an automatic, or are they going to live? They both can exist at the same time?
Yeah, so the way we migrate the data, one of our core requirements at the beginning was to maintain backward compatibility with Symbiota2 or Symbiota1, right? And so all of our migrations, or what they call them, are basically really easy scripts you can run on your data to make it work with Symbiota2. All of those are based on the assumption that you're starting with a Symbiota1 database. And so when you run that migration, it's a single command on the command line. It updates the data for you. And we definitely recommend a new database just because, right, that's the best practices. We don't want to ruin anything or take responsibility for you ruining anything. So we don't recommend that. But ideally, minimal changes to the original Symbiota1 schema, and you can update with a single command.
The other recommendation, which of course everybody would do, except for those of us that tend to forget, back up first before you do your migration.
Right. Yep. That's the big takeaway.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, then we will end this session. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll either have the next open session next week or 3 weeks from today. Okay, well, with that, thanks a lot, everybody, for coming, and I will end this meeting now for all.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.